Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another animation analysis. Today we have the song Burning in Embers from Genshin Impact. I need to always preface this at the beginning of these videos. I don't know much about the lore, I don't really follow these, and I don't play the games, so I'm going to be looking at this purely objectively and subjectively based on the animation, and not really focusing on other details in there. It's all going to be technical stuff, so if you're hoping for me to like dig into the characters' motivations and such with this, it's less likely I might pick up something, but just don't expect it. You're here for the animation analysis. That's what I'm here to give you. So without further ado, let's find out why so many people have been requesting this recently and why I need to watch it so bad. Let's go! Ooh. Subtitles? Yeah, okay. I think there's an English version, but I'm already here. Again, more animation than story focus, so. Great attention to detail so far, and just background art. The characters are already really expressive. That's a good sign. Fish. It's weirdly wholesome so far. I don't know, I guess I'm just so used to like really depressing stories for these games. I mean, I'm still early in. This is 7 minutes long. I'm expecting it to get worse. This has a lot of like anime specific like physics things. Oh, but look, it got worse. I called it. It got bad. Maybe. I saw the shock and the blood. Oh yeah, it did get. Ah, that's right. It got bad. Yeah. I don't know why I'm celebrating that. That's really depressing, actually. Yeah, this must have been directed by somebody with plenty of experience in anime. There's just a lot of very stylistically specific things that they're doing here. Great work on the color vibrance here too. Poppy, but not too obvious. Great impact effects animation. Very simple, like all things considered, but I like that they're kind of keeping it more reserved for the moment. Ooh. Ooh, all right. Whoever directed this definitely knows fight scenes. They're not a novice, that's for sure. Using the environment well. The choreography is solid. I mean, you never expect somebody who's new to be directing these, but sometimes there's people who just aren't as familiar with certain things and you can kind of tell. It's definitely not the case here. Oh no. You angered the main character. Jesus fucking Christ! Damn! Ooh! Impact frames! Any longtime viewer of mine knows I talk about those. That was a really nice fight sequence. It's great emotional impact. Well paced. And the Northern Lights. This animation has everything. I know those cloaks. Man, that really feels like it should have been the end, but there's more. That's what, okay. Now it just makes sense why there's the whole, I've seen like the mother and father used interchangeably with that character. Now it's making sense. Okay. All right. Cool! First thing I want to say is, I didn't realize this until after watching, of course, but this having a lot of parallels to her story is really cool. I figured it might have something like that, but I didn't know how far it was going to go. Additionally, I didn't really recognize that these stuffed animals were kind of in there too. So like, again, makes sense. I just didn't put two and two together until after the fact, which just honestly signifies a really well-paced story. You're able to connect all those dots and go, oh, like after the fact. And this is one of those ones where I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here, after I found out where the actual story was going and how she got to where she was. I also really like how they make these kids really expressive, because that's a natural thing for children, is to be expressive and to show those completely unfazed emotions. There's no reprehensiveness in the emotions of children. They're very blunt, and having characters shown properly as kids without that sort of barrier is really refreshing, because sometimes, especially in anime stuff, you have kids that have to grow up way too quick, and you don't get to see a lot of this a lot of the time, so I actually really like this. You get that pure innocence shining through, as well as building their relationship together. That's just a good story building thing, very well done there. And I really like how it's matched with this match cut here, of just looking at her, understanding what she's saying, and like wanting to be a part of what her like life goal is, and then immediately snapping to this. That's just a perfect, I love match cuts when they're done right and they serve the purpose of the story. That makes it even better. A lot of the times they do, and they're used to accent those moments, and this is no different. It's just a very smart directorial decision, especially with the slight addition of the blood smudge on the bottom of the cheek. That's just beautiful. I love that. Just the subtle changes in a match cut are really what can sell the difference in time and situation of a match cut. So when you have those, try to change something subtly, and that'll basically sell whatever you're trying to do. That little blood smear makes it that much more sellable. I mean, you can tell the difference in her expression just slightly, but if you didn't have that blood, it would be a little bit too subtle. So I think that was a great addition there. Also, in addition to that, you have the color palette change, of course, going from cools to warms in order to show that immediate swap of time is very useful. But I also like that they traded out these like little specks of dust and like beautifying on this scene that are just floating around. It's supposed to feel a little bit more mystical, you know, and just pretty and soft. And then when it continues on, you trade those out for embers and like flame, and that's really like just a small but aggressive detail. The subtle shift from the specks of dust to the specks of flames and destruction is a completely jarring transition. Subtle enough that it doesn't make you go, Jesus, but it's also very noticeable, and that's very important. Those subtle changes, just like the cheek, matter a lot in shots like this. I also love this reveal because it's very subtle, but it's also very obvious. Like, you know what's going on here. Like, I had that moment when I was reacting to it. I saw her against, and I'm like, oh, she's dying, isn't she? But I didn't fully know why, and they hid that detail, and then when they revealed it, I was like, oh, that makes more sense. And that's really sad the way that they do that. It's a great directorial choice, but it pushes that emotion even further. It just makes you go, oh shit. And it's so important. Like, hiding certain details in specific shots and motivational moments in a story is insanely undertold. Like, it's done a lot. It's not underdone, but it's understated. And a lot of people who watch stuff, and just in general, the consumers of these stories, don't tend to really appreciate how removing detail can change the entire energy of what they're watching. And by hiding it just long enough, you can make a great impact. But if you hide it too long, then it takes away from the impact. It's a very fine razor's edge line to hit, and they did this very well. That pace of her just talking, saying one or two lines before them actually revealing what was happening is really, really well done. This is, like I said during the reaction, must have been done by somebody who handles a lot of anime, because that is an art form. You know, like, getting these things timed is an art form in and of itself, and the anime world as a whole, a lot of directors and artists in that community do know exactly how to make that work, because it's a lot of what they do on a daily basis. It's very important to be able to nail those emotional pinpoints when you're making a series that, while it might have these big, huge, epic battles, largely focuses on dialogue and drama. So you have to be able to nail those down, and getting things down to timing is insanely important in anime. It's important in everything, but especially in anime when they have the limited amount of drawings but mostly dialogue. It's just really fine-tuned. Another great anime-esque thing they do here directorially is, of course, when it's just showing this character standing here, there's a separation of multiple parts of her body, which can signify that, like, mental separation. We already saw that with how her head was down, the eyes were covered, you couldn't see that. There was already a disconnect from the character there. The eyes are extraordinarily important, especially in anime. That's partially why they make them so large in their designs, but it's just the matter of, you want to be able to signify how much of an impact something has. This did this very well, and not only in doing that like shattered glass effect, like things are still together, but it's definitely fragmented, is kind of what this is signifying to me, in addition to the it's a terrible day for rain, signifying the crying and the inside, the pain there. I'm gonna kind of let this one play through while I'm talking about it, just because I have enough I want to say about this scene as a whole, less of details. The choreography I mentioned is brilliant. They utilize multiple levels of this area. They utilize the pillars. They fight around things. There's a lot of like color specificity here with the fire and then the cooler outside colors against what the other character is doing. There's just a lot of that good clash. There was one right there with that explosion. This 3D camera movement, just these slight sweeps in order to utilize more of that space. It's an unfortunate reality that in a lot of projects like this, they tend to not utilize the space that they're in, because it takes more time to process and draw all that. It's just a pain in the butt. So when they do it, it just looks really nice and you feel more of that impact of the actual moment. And I know I made this quip earlier about her being the main character and you never mess with the main character, but again, done very well. Detaching her with the eyes, you don't get to see that until right here, and you kind of notice that resolve in her one eye, and she notices it too, and she's like, oh no, it's just, oh, that one. Ooh, I wanted it to get there so I could talk about it in detail. I want to talk about why it hits so damn heavy. It's really simple stuff, but all added together and done well, just like everything else in a great animation. It matters a lot, and it has a lot of impact. No pun intended. But here, she literally takes one frame to show up. It's boom, bam, she's there. And you don't see her start reacting until that exact frame too, so you can see this like pure disconnect in her speed with her ability to like perceive the speed. So it's just like, oh no. And it only takes her another like 4 or 5 frames to fully ramp up. And the reason that this hits so well is because this is actually a perfect angle. This connection here between where her leg is and where it's going to end up is a direct line, and seeing that perfect linear alignment, if even for only a few frames, the human brain is fast enough to perceive that, and it makes it feel so much more impactful when she actually lets it go, and you just see all of that impact, this blurring around her, showing that shockwave of raw force, and this following sequence. She's doing a payoff here, actually. The fact that she hasn't moved out of this pose and she's lifted off the ground, that's also a payoff of an extreme buildup of energy, which is very important in animation. And I love that they did that because it's subtle enough with her barely lifting off the ground to show that like 95, if not more, % of that kick and power was going into her gut, which just makes it feel that much more punchy. Of course, I'm talking about this in detail, but this is all stuff that happens to the viewer's mind in fragments of a second. The human mind is extraordinarily quick, and these sorts of things you feel even though you're not actively processing why it feels so good. I'm just putting it into words for you. That's why this feels so impactful. Obviously, the payoff here in the next couple of frames of her just flying up, there's no body here. It is literally a laser kick. And she just, bam, right in there. You get a little flash of her body up there in the center, and this huge shock wave, the brightness of the outside light, just resonating through this entire shot here. All the glass shattering is a beautiful detail, a great visual spectacle going on here. The smoke, again, the effects in this entire fight are pretty brilliant, but I didn't want to talk about them too much because I wanted to wait for this last one where she gets absolutely bodied. So let's get to that next. So starting off here, you have a lot of basic buildup. You see the fire starting in the background, which is a great signifier for what's about to happen. Then her clenching that's a very anime thing to do. Again, a lot of those, it's never a bad thing. It's just how stylistically similar a lot of these are. I assume a Japanese studio might have handled this. If not, it was definitely a Chinese or Korean studio that's very, very familiar with the anime aesthetic and was just replicating that. And obviously they got a director who knew exactly how to utilize all that. So seeing this build up, you get a lot of this slow build up. This visual of like the scythe happening was a beautiful, just super smooth transition from that grip to that full blade there, and then having it cut across to just pinpoint right in the center, and you know exactly where that's going. It's just a little bit of visual clarity. You get to see the character reacting to it, but you don't get to see it actually fire off. You only really see it glow and head towards like the little point. Then you get to see her watching it like, well, I'm boned. And so she is. The payoff for this, utilizing the mushroom cloud here, very, very thoughtful on this too, utilizing and expanding upon the dome happening here, and just working with that and allowing the dome to expand and shape itself around the natural structure of this building. Very good directorial choice. You could have just had a laser shot right through the center, but it's like, no, we need more impact. We need this payoff to feel more implosive, more explosive. And it's like, Oh, I love impact frames. This one is beautiful too because they use the paint spackle everywhere. This just all these little tiny flecks of like grungy detail. It's so very graffiti core and I love that. This impact frame is really interesting too, just showing the extremes of the heat profile on the screen. You don't get any other detail. It's exclusively where the heat is, just like any other heat map would be. This is the hottest, this is the next hottest. That's the like expanded cloud of like the heat wave heading outward. The low heat is still that hot, which is enough to burn a human body. So imagine how hot that white area is. It's probably thousands of degrees, and you know there's no body left inside that dome at that point. She gone, bruh. I also love the additional detail of having it down here, just so you can see that there are other avenues of escape for all of this pent-up energy on the screen, and that's something that a lot of animations tend to just kind of fudge on. They don't really focus on those other areas and only focus on showing energy expelling where it needs to go, not where it could. So that's another great extra detail there. Whoever drew these impact frames really respected the space and the environment, and while a lot of them do, this is just another one of those tiny little extra details that makes it feel that much more impactful in the small amount of time that these appear on frame. It all adds up, and so many people overlook them for that reason. And when it all actually explodes here, we go back to this grungy, gritty detail going on here. I actually love this. The way that they did this was making cubes. A lot of animation studios, especially modern ones, when they're doing big details of things exploding or just breaking apart into a million pieces, will simplify it down to cubes and utilize that because it's much easier to draw than random pieces of individual randomized edges on rubble and just rocks and stuff. Making everything cubes not only makes it easier to draw and quicker for the animators, but it actually does like subconsciously boost that thought of that was so precise that it made a perfect square or rectangle. So like that plays a lot of ways in the head. And while a lot of people think that animation has just gotten lazy and that style is kind of a lazy cop-out, which I completely disagree with for those exact reasons, this is a really unique way to utilize that. I don't think I've ever seen the cubism like strokes like this used in an impact frame. I've seen it used in some modern like fighting anime. I've seen it in My Hero Academia, for example, but not in an impact frame. Usually it's more of the focus of the shot, not something that's accentual. And this one is really just for me, I think, but this is kind of a neat shot for one specific reason: the framing. This doesn't have much going on, and we know that it's supposed to be a POV, like we're seeing what the kid is seeing, but the way that she's framed is pretty specific to me. So not only do you see obviously the huge area obstructed by her hand, and that's kind of supposed to be where that is, that makes sense, nothing big there, but the fact that not only is the kid looking up and you get to see that her chest here is in the center of the frame where the kid's head would be, but her own head is almost out of frame. It's cut off a little bit. So to me, that could be signifying like not quite seeing the whole picture of this character in a literal and metaphorical sense, and that's just really neat. Again, dumb thing, that could just be me overthinking it, but it is kind of the point of these videos to analyze these and think of ways that the director might be thinking. That could have just been, hey, make it like so she's bigger on screen because the kid is smaller, so you wouldn't see everything. But this could be another like character hint to that this character might become a villain or something later, and that can all add up to the whole story of it. But I think that's about it, so thank you all so very much for watching. I now see why so many people wanted me to watch that. It is just a spectacle of detail. There's so many little things in there, and with the detail of it looking so anime-esque, it really just speaks to a lot of people, I figure. So really fun to talk about something that looks so specifically anime instead of being a mixed media, which happens a lot for my animation breakdowns, or having different approaches to the overall narrative in visuals as well, because a lot of the stories obviously are very unique, but the visual storytelling of the anime world is so very specific and down to a science at this point. So having it so obvious in this one is just a nice little cherry on top for me. Being a weeb myself, I cannot deny the allegations. So it's just really fun to talk about these and be able to see what little things are noticed by other parts of the world and utilized for these sorts of projects in a broad scope. And that's just so neat to me. I'm a dork, what can I say? But anyway, thank you all so very much for watching. If you like this video and you want me to get to more animation stuff, by all means drop one down below in the comments and I'll do my best as always. It does take me longer to do these videos, so it does take longer to get to them, but I will keep them in a list and I'll probably touch on them eventually. And otherwise, if you just like this video and you want to follow and support me to see more videos in the future, both animation and music related, you know how to do all that, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!